Luxury isn't just about big, flashy features. It's about the small things that most people don't notice consciously, but feel subconsciously. It's the subtle way a door closes with a solid thunk instead of a hollow rattle. It's the weight of the steering wheel in your hands, the smoothness of the switchgear, the way the cabin feels insulated from the world. These tiny details make the difference between a car that simply looks luxurious and one that feels truly high-end. Ford understood this better than most. That's why the 1968 Ford LTD wasn't just a car with a fancy grille and plush seats. It was engineered to feel expensive in ways that people couldn't quite put their finger on, but definitely noticed. The bank vault door closing sound, you can tell a lot about a car's quality just by closing the door. Cheaper cars tend to have doors that sound tinny, almost hollow, with a light and flimsy feel. Expensive cars? They have heavy, solid doors that shut with a deep, reassuring thud. Ford worked deliberately to achieve that sound with the LTD. By reinforcing the inner door panels and adding high-density insulation, they ensured that every time an LTD owner pulled the doors shut, they felt an instant sense of quality. It wasn't about making the car physically stronger. It was about psychology. A solid door closing sound tells your brain, this car is well built. And once a driver believes that, they subconsciously start to view the entire car as more refined. A dashboard designed for prestige, a car's dashboard is more than just a collection of dials and switches. It's the face of the interior. It's what the driver interacts with every single time they sit in the car. Ford knew that if they wanted the LTD to feel expensive, they had to get this right. That's why the LTD's dashboard wasn't cluttered with cheap plastics or awkward low-rent switchgear. Instead, Ford borrowed design cues from luxury brands, focusing on clean lines, premium textures, and a balanced layout. Wood grain trim stretched across the dashboard, giving it the visual appeal of a high-end sedan. Brushed metal accents added depth and contrast, avoiding the plasticky look of cheaper cars. Illuminated gauges were carefully backlit, ensuring they glowed with a soft, elegant presence at night. And then there was the steering wheel, one of the most important touch points in any car. Instead of a thin, hard-rimmed wheel like most budget cars of the era, the LTD featured a thicker, padded steering wheel with a luxury-inspired design. It didn't just look better, it felt better in the hands, reinforcing the idea that this was a car for those who appreciated the finer things in life. Hidden soft-touch surfaces, one of the secrets to a high-end car interior, is tech. People don't just see luxury, they feel it. Ford paid close attention to which parts of the LTD's cabin drivers actually touched, and instead of using hard, unyielding plastics, they strategically placed padded materials in key areas. The door armrests were not just basic panels but featured soft, cushiony padding, making long drives more comfortable. The center console had a refined finish, preventing that cold industrial feel of bare metal. Even the sun visors were made from higher quality materials, avoiding the cheap, flimsy fabric found in lower-tier sedans. These were small things, details most people wouldn't mention directly, but when combined, they created an overall impression of quality. Luxury, after all, is not just about what you see, it's about how things feel in your hands. The unique magic door gate on wagons. For buyers who opted for the LTD station wagon, Ford included one of its most innovative features, the magic door gate. At first glance, it looked like a normal rear tailgate, but with a simple pull of the handle, it could function in two different ways. Swing open like a door, allowing easy side access. Drop down like a traditional tailgate, perfect for loading cargo. This was a feature that felt straight out of a Cadillac-level engineering department, yet it was available on the Ford LTD. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about giving owners a feature that made them feel like they owned something special. The LTD's headliner. An overlooked detail that screamed luxury. Most people don't think about the ceiling of a car. But in cheaper vehicles, the headliner, the material covering the inside of the roof, is often an afterthought. Thin fabric, rough finishes, or even exposed metal in some budget cars. Not in the LTD. Ford chose a high-quality perforated vinyl headliner that not only looked premium, but also absorbed sound, helping to create an even quieter ride. This was a small, almost hidden detail, but for those who paid attention, it reinforced the fact that the LTD wasn't just another family sedan. It was built to impress. Why these hidden details mattered psychologically: luxury isn't just about big, obvious features like leather seats or a powerful V8. It's about consistency. Every single part of the car should feel well made. Ford understood this deeply. That's why they focused on things like the way a door sounds when it closes, the softness of the armrests, the feel of the steering wheel in your hands, the smoothness of the switchgear, the quiet refinement of the headliner. These weren't things Ford had to do, but by paying attention to the details most car makers ignored, Ford elevated the LTD to a level that most people never expected. And that's why so many drivers were fooled into believing it was a luxury car, because in every way that mattered it truly felt like one. Ford didn't just sell a car, they sold an experience of prestige, without the luxury car price tag. And once you stepped inside an LTD, it was almost impossible not to believe in it. Luxury is more than just appearance. It's about how a car feels on the road. It's about gliding over rough pavement instead of bouncing over every imperfection. It's about a quiet cabin where the world outside disappears, leaving only the soft hum of the engine. Ford understood that if the LTD was going to feel like a high-end car, it needed to drive like one, and that's exactly what they engineered. A ride so smooth, so refined, that it rivaled Cadillac and Lincoln. The whisper quiet cabin, a lesson in soundproofing. Close the door of a cheap car and you immediately hear it, the noise of the outside world creeping into the cabin. Wind, traffic, road vibrations. The experience is anything but luxurious. But step inside the 1968 Ford LTD, and the difference was striking. Ford didn't just add insulation, they engineered silence. Extra thick carpeting dampened vibrations and road noise. Double-sealed doors prevented wind from whistling through small gaps. Specially designed weather stripping reduced outside disturbances. A new soundproofing material under the hood absorbed engine noise before it reached the cabin. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about creating an environment of tranquility, the kind of quiet, isolated experience you'd expect from a luxury sedan costing thousands more. Ford even went a step further. They analyzed how different frequencies of sound traveled through the car and strategically placed insulation where it mattered most. The result? A ride experience that felt expensive, not because of the price, but because of the effort Ford put into crafting it. The revolutionary twin I-beam suspension's secret luxury isn't just about a quiet ride. It's about how a car moves. Ford had already perfected the smooth-riding, full-size sedan formula with the Galaxy and Mercury models, but they wanted the LTD to feel even more refined. That's where the twin I-beam suspension came in. Instead of a simple, rigid setup like many cheaper cars, Ford's engineering team developed a system that gave the LTD both stability and comfort. Independent front suspension absorbed bumps without transferring the shock to the rest of the car. Heavy-duty coil springs provided a cushioned ride, ensuring the LTD didn't float like an old-fashioned land yacht. Strategically tuned shock absorbers minimized body roll, making the car feel controlled even on uneven roads. The result? A ride that was buttery smooth over potholes and rough roads, without the excessive sway that plagued big American cars of the era. This gave LTD owners the best of both worlds, a soft, floating sensation without feeling disconnected from the road. It was a setup so refined it even caught the attention of Cadillac owners who were used to the best. Power steering that felt like it belonged in a Rolls-Royce. Back in the 1960s, power steering was a luxury, not a given. Many cars had stiff mechanical steering that required muscle to turn the wheel. Others had overboosted steering that felt too light and disconnected from the road. Ford balanced both worlds with the LTD. The LTD's variable ratio power steering was designed to be effortless at low speeds, making parking easy. But unlike many American luxury cars that had steering so light it felt like a toy, the LTD still offered controlled feedback at higher speeds. Hydraulic assistance adjusted dynamically, ensuring a natural steering feel. A wider steering wheel rim gave a comfortable grip, reducing hand fatigue on long drives. A redesigned steering gearbox minimized play, keeping the car responsive without being twitchy. This wasn't just power steering, it was precision steering, giving the LTD an upscale driving experience that felt controlled, smooth, and effortless. The LTD's braking advantage. Stopping like a luxury car, power and comfort are important, but a true luxury car doesn't just go smoothly, it stops smoothly too. Many cars of the late 1960s still relied on drum brakes all around. They worked, but they faded quickly under hard braking, and stopping distances were far from ideal. Ford gave the LTD an edge by offering front disc brakes, a feature that was still considered a premium upgrade at the time. Vented front discs provided stronger stopping power, reducing brake fade on long drive. A redesigned master cylinder gave a smoother, more controlled braking response. Power-assisted braking ensured stopping was just as effortless as acceleration. For an everyday driver, these weren't just technical improvements. They were confidence boosters. LTD owners knew that, whether they were cruising on the highway or navigating city streets, their car had the stopping power of a true luxury sedan. The LTD's ride V's Cadillac and Lincoln Now. Here's where things got really interesting. At the time, if you wanted the smoothest ride possible, you bought a Cadillac. That was the rule. But when journalists and drivers tested the 1968 Ford LTD, they were surprised. The difference wasn't as big as they expected. The LTD had a more refined suspension than most Chevrolets and Pontiacs. The steering feel was better than many Lincolns. The cabin insulation made it quieter than some Cadillac models at certain speeds. All of this at a fraction of the cost. It wasn't that the LTD was better than a Cadillac in every way, but it was so close that many buyers couldn't justify spending thousands more on a luxury badge. Ford didn't just build a better car. They built a car that challenged the idea of luxury itself. And that's why so many people, even today, still remember the smooth, effortless ride of the 1968 LTD. It wasn't just another full-size sedan. It was a car that fooled the world into thinking it belonged in a higher class. A luxury car isn't just about comfort, it's also about effortless power. A smooth ride means nothing if the engine feels weak or struggles to keep up with traffic. Ford knew this, and they made sure the LTD had an engine lineup that delivered both quiet refinement and respectable power. At a time when big, thirsty V8s dominated American roads, the LTD had to strike a delicate balance. It had to feel strong and capable like a muscle car, but remain smooth and quiet like a true luxury vehicle. And that's exactly what Ford achieved. The secret behind the LTD's effortless power? A true luxury car never feels like it's working hard. Acceleration should be smooth, not jerky. Power should be available when needed, without the driver feeling like they have to push the engine to its limits. Ford ensured the LTD delivered exactly that by offering a range of V8 engines, each designed to match different driving needs. 289 cubic inch V8 4.7L, the base engine, offering a refined and fuel-efficient option for those who valued comfort over raw power. 390 cubic inch V8 6.4L, the mid-level option, balancing power and smoothness, perfect for effortless highway cruising. 428 cubic inch V8 7L, the high-performance option, delivering serious torque without sacrificing ride quality. The real magic of these engines wasn't just in their displacement, it was in how Ford tuned them to deliver a premium experience. Smooth throttle response. The LTD's engines weren't tuned like a muscle car. They delivered power in a linear, refined way, without sudden bursts of acceleration. Low-end torque, luxury cars shouldn't need to rev high to move quickly. The LTD's V8s provided ample power at low RPMs, making acceleration feel effortless. Quiet operation. Unlike some performance engines of the era, the LTD's V8s were designed to run quietly, reducing engine noise inside the cab. The result? A car that didn't just feel powerful, it felt expensive. The hidden engineering that made the LTD's engines so smooth, raw horsepower was never the only measure of luxury. A true high-end car feels refined, no matter how fast it's going. That's why Ford put extra effort into making sure the LTD's engine ran as smoothly and quietly as possible. Hydraulic lifters reduced engine vibrations, ensuring a quieter and smoother ride. A redesigned intake manifold improved airflow, reducing harsh engine noise at high speeds. Rubber engine mounts absorbed vibrations, so the driver felt power, not roughness. A dual-plane crankshaft design optimized balance, preventing the uneven firing that made cheaper V8s feel rough. These weren't just minor tweaks. Ford engineers obsessed over the smallest details to ensure that when a driver pressed the gas pedal, the LTD moved gracefully with power that never felt forced. The transmission that made every shift seamless. A A luxury car's engine is only as good as the transmission behind it. No one wants to feel clunky gear shifts or hesitation when accelerating. That's why Ford paired the LTD's powerful V8S with refined transmission options designed for smoothness. 3-speed manual, standard but rarely chosen by LTD buyers. 3-speed automatic, the preferred option, offering seamless shifts and a relaxed driving experience. 4-speed manual, available for those who wanted more control, but not common on luxury-trimmed LTDs. The automatic Cruise-O-Matic was where the LTD truly shined. Fluid torque converter minimized shift shock, making gear changes almost imperceptible. Adaptive shift mapping adjusted based on driving conditions, ensuring the right gear was always selected. Overdrive gearing allowed for low RPM cruising, reducing engine noise and improving highway efficiency. For LTD owners, this meant one thing: driving felt effortless. There was no need to think about shifting. The car simply responded, making every drive smooth, controlled, and relaxing. The LTD's highway mastery, cruising like a Cadillac. Without the price, power, and transmission refinement are important, but the true test of a luxury car's engineering is how it performs on the open road. A high-end vehicle should feel just as stable at 70 mph as it does at 20 mph. It should provide the kind of ride that makes long-distance travel feel like a pleasure, not a chore. This is where the LTD excelled. A long wheelbase meant the car absorbed bumps effortlessly, preventing the choppiness found in shorter vehicles. Soft yet controlled suspension eliminated the harshness of road imperfections while keeping the car from feeling floaty. Low RPM cruising meant the engine was barely working at highway speeds, reducing noise and increasing fuel efficiency. Drivers who stepped out of an LTD after a long road trip felt refreshed, not exhausted. The combination of a quiet cabin, smooth suspension, and effortless power made it one of the best full-size sedans of its time. It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was about arriving in style, comfort, and with zero fatigue. The LTD's secret edge over its competition. Many people looking for a comfortable, refined ride automatically thought of Cadillac, Buick, but what made the 1968 Ford LTD so special was that it delivered a Cadillac-like experience at a Ford price. It was quieter than most Chevrolets and Pontiacs. It had better steering feel than many Lincolns. It offered a smoother ride than a Chrysler New Yorker. And yet, it was significantly more affordable than its luxury competitors. Ford had successfully created a car that felt expensive without carrying the premium price tag. It is the kind of car that made people ask, "Wait, this is a Ford?" Because it felt like something that belonged in a much higher class. With its smooth power, effortless transmission, and highway cruising mastery, the LTD didn't just compete with luxury brands, it made people question why they should pay more. And that's the secret that made it one of the most respected full-size sedans of its time. Luxury isn't just about leather seats and chrome accents. A true high-end car makes driving feel effortless. It glides over the road, isolating the driver from rough pavement, engine noise, and vibrations. It doesn't demand constant corrections to the steering wheel or make the driver feel every imperfection in the road. Instead, it provides a sense of calm, confidence, and control. That's exactly what the 1968 Ford LTD, and the secret to its exceptional ride quality was a combination of engineering refinements that most people didn't even notice, because they weren't supposed to. A well-designed car doesn't draw attention to itself. It just works seamlessly. The revolutionary silent Ford suspension, Ford engineers knew that a comfortable ride wasn't just about soft springs. Many full-size cars of the 1960s were overly floaty, making them feel disconnected from the road. Others were too firm, which meant every bump and crack could be felt through the steering wheel. The LTD struck the perfect balance with its silent flow suspension, a system designed to absorb road imperfections without making the car feel sluggish. Independent front suspension allowed the front wheels to move separately, reducing harshness over bumps. Extra thick coil springs absorbed vibrations while maintaining stability at high speeds. Specially tuned shock absorbers minimized body roll, preventing the car from feeling too soft in corners. A rubber-isolated subframe acted as a cushion between the body and the road, eliminating vibrations that could make their way into the cabin. This meant that even at highway speeds, the LTD felt smooth, composed, and refined. The driver wasn't constantly adjusting the steering wheel to stay on course, and passengers didn't feel the constant bouncing sensation common in other full-size cars of the era. How Ford designed the LTD to feel like a luxury car without the price tag. Every luxury car of the 1960s faced the same challenge: how to keep road noise, wind noise, and vibrations out of the cabin. Cadillac and Lincoln relied on heavy soundproofing, thick carpeting, and tight-fitting panels. These materials worked well but added weight and cost. Ford had a different approach. Instead of simply adding insulation, they engineered noise out of the car from the beginning. Aero-tuned body design. The LTD was tested in wind tunnels to reduce wind resistance and noise at high speeds. This was rare for a full-size sedan in the 1960s. Double-sealed doors. The door panels had an additional rubber seal to prevent wind noise from entering the cabin. Extra thick firewall insulation. The Ford placed a special noise-dampening material between the engine bay and the cabin to block engine sounds. Floating subframe. The chassis was designed to absorb vibrations before they could reach the passengers. The result? A ride that felt refined, controlled, and, most importantly, quiet. Owners of the LTD often compared it to far more expensive cars, not because it was packed with unnecessary luxury features, but because it felt premium where it mattered most. On the road, effortless steering that made driving relaxing luxury isn't just about comfort, it's also about ease of driving. A high-end car should never feel like a struggle to maneuver, and the 1968 Ford LTD had one of the smoothest steering systems of its time. Variable ratio power steering. This system made the steering wheel light at low speeds for easy parking, but more stable at high speeds to prevent overcorrection. Torsion bar stabilized steering column. Reduced vibrations from the road, giving the driver a smooth and controlled feel. Low steering effort design. Unlike some competitors, the LTD's power steering didn't feel overly loose. It provided just the right amount of resistance to keep the driver in control. For older drivers or those who took long highway trips, this was a game changer. The LTD could be driven for hours without fatigue, and it always felt composed no matter the road conditions. How the LTD beat luxury brands at their own game? At a time when brands like Cadillac, Lincoln, and Chrysler Imperial dominated the luxury market, Ford's LTD came in as an unexpected challenger. It didn't have the prestige of a Cadillac badge, but it delivered a similar driving experience at a fraction of the price. Smoother than a Chrysler Newport, thanks to its silent flow suspension and advanced chassis design. Quieter than a Buick Electra 225, Ford's extra attention to noise reduction made it feel more refined. Easier to drive than a Lincoln Continental, its steering and suspension setup made it effortless to handle. This wasn't just marketing hype, it was something buyers could feel the moment they got behind the wheel. And that's why so many people, especially those who didn't want to spend Cadillac money, chose the LTD instead. The secret psychological appeal of the LTD's driving experience. What made people fall in love with the 1968 Ford LTD wasn't just the features, it was how it made them feel behind the wheel. Confident. The powerful V8 and smooth suspension gave the driver a sense of total control. Relaxed. The quiet cabin and effortless steering made long drives feel refreshing instead of tiring. Proud. The LTD looked and felt premium, giving owners a sense of prestige without the high cost. This combination of comfort, control, and quiet sophistication is exactly what luxury car buyers were looking for. But instead of paying for a Lincoln or a Cadillac, they could have it in a Ford. That's the brilliance of the LTD. It was a car that made people feel like they were driving something far more expensive, and most people on the road had no idea. Power. It's the one thing that separates an ordinary car from a true luxury experience. A powerful car isn't just about speed, it's about effortless acceleration, smooth highway cruising, and the confidence that comes from knowing there's always more power on tap. And that's exactly what the 1968 Ford LTD delivered. While other full-size sedans were still relying on outdated six-cylinder engines or underpowered V8s, Ford gave the LTD a selection of engines that could match or even exceed some of the best luxury cars of the time. The V8 powertrain that made the LTD feel like a high-end machine. At a time when American cars were getting larger and heavier, Ford knew that a weak engine would ruin the driving experience. A luxury car should glide onto the highway, overtake effortlessly, and cruise at 70 mph without straining. That's why the standard engine in the 1968 LTD was already impressive, a 302 cubic inch 4.9L V8 producing 210 horsepower. But for those who wanted more, Ford offered two larger V8s that truly transformed the LTD into a highway king. 390 cubic inch 6.4L V8. With 265 horsepower, this engine delivered strong acceleration and smooth performance at any speed. 429 cubic inch 7L Thunderjet V8, producing 360 horsepower. This was the same engine found in Ford's high-performance models. It gave the LTD sports car-like acceleration without sacrificing comfort. The real magic of these engines wasn't just in their power, it was in how they delivered it. Unlike smaller, high-revving engines that had to work hard to produce power, these big V8s generated instant torque at low RPMs. That meant no hesitation when accelerating from a stop, effortless overtaking on the highway, a smooth, refined driving feel no matter the speed. This was the kind of performance people expected from a Cadillac Eldorado or a Chrysler Imperial, but Ford was offering it at a fraction of the price. The secret to the LTD's smooth and silent engine performance: a powerful engine is only part of the equation. To truly feel luxurious, a car needs to be quiet, smooth, and refined. Ford engineers went to great lengths to make sure that LTD drivers never felt or heard the engine working too hard. Hydraulic motor mounts, reduced vibrations, so drivers didn't feel the engine shake the car. Triple-layer hood insulation, absorbed engine noise, making the cabin whisper quiet at high speeds. Low RPM highway cruising, with its long gearing, the LTD's engine ran at lower RPMs on the highway, eliminating the high-pitched drone that plagued many competitors. These details made a huge difference in how the LTD felt on the road. At idle, the engine was nearly silent. At cruising speeds, it was so smooth that passengers could have a conversation without raising their voices. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about prestige. In the 1960S, a quiet ride was a sign of true luxury, and Ford had managed to achieve this without the hefty price tag of a Cadillac or Lincoln. Automatic transmission, the ultimate luxury driving experience. A smooth, powerful engine needs the right transmission to deliver its power effortlessly, and Ford knew that a luxury car should never feel jerky, sluggish, or unrefined. That's why the LTD came equipped with Ford's Cruise-O-Matic automatic transmission, one of the most advanced gearboxes of its time. Seamless shifting. Unlike older automatics that hesitated or jerked between gears, the Cruise-O-Matic shifted silky smooth, making acceleration feel effortless. Highway efficiency. The transmission's tall gearing allowed the LTD to cruise at 70 mph with low engine stress, improving fuel economy and reducing noise. Instant power delivery. Unlike some competitors that had sluggish throttle response, the LTD's automatic transmission reacted instantly to the driver's input, delivering power on demand. This meant that whether driving through city streets or wide-open highways, the LTD always felt refined, responsive, and ready to perform. Fuel efficiency. The unexpected advantage over luxury rivals, big V8 engines weren't known for their fuel economy, but Ford engineers designed the LTD's powertrain to be more efficient than many of its luxury competitors. Low RPM cruising. The LTD's gearing allowed it to maintain highway speeds with minimal fuel consumption. Advanced carburetor design. Ford used a two-barrel carburetor on lower trims for efficiency, while the performance-oriented models used a four-barrel carb for power. Aerodynamic design. The LTD's sleeker body shape reduced drag, improving fuel economy compared to boxier competitors. While no one in the 1960S was expecting 30 mpg, the LTD was surprisingly efficient for its size and power. It could travel long distances on a single tank, an important feature for older drivers who valued comfort and convenience over frequent fuel stops. Why the LTD's powertrain gave it an edge over Cadillac and Chrysler. By 1968, luxury buyers had been conditioned to believe that if they wanted power, they had to pay top dollar for a Cadillac or Lincoln. But Ford proved them wrong. Faster than a Cadillac DeVille, the LTD's 429 V8 could outrun many contemporary Cadillacs. Smoother than a Chrysler Imperial, the combination of a refined engine and Cruise-O-Matic transmission made the LTD's ride feel more polished. More affordable than a Lincoln Continental, Ford delivered nearly the same luxury driving experience without the luxury car price tag. This wasn't just about marketing. It was something people felt the moment they got behind the wheel. A test drive in the LTD was often enough to convince buyers that they didn't need to spend thousands more for a high-end nameplate. The LTD's psychological appeal, power that made drivers feel in control. A car isn't just a machine, it's an experience. And the LTD's engine and transmission were designed to make drivers feel powerful, confident, and in control. Effortless acceleration, no need to push the engine hard. The power was always there when needed. Confidence on the highway. The LTD could cruise at high speeds without strain, making long trips more enjoyable. Prestige without the cost. The feeling of driving a powerful, smooth, and quiet car, without the guilt of overpaying. For many buyers, the LTD wasn't just a smart financial decision, it was an emotional one. It made them feel like they were driving something far more expensive than it really was, and that's why the 1968 Ford LTD fooled everyone, not with gimmicks, but with genuine performance, refinement, and luxury. A luxury car isn't just about looks or power, it's about the way it feels on the road. A true high-end automobile should float over bumps, glide through turns, and make every journey feel effortless. And that's exactly where the 1968 Ford LTD delivered a driving experience that rivaled cars costing thousands of dollars more. Ford's secret to a cloud-like ride? In the late 1960s, car buyers expected large sedans to be smooth. But the LTD took that expectation to a whole new level. Ford engineers understood something simple but critical. Luxury isn't just about what a car can do, it's about how it makes the driver and passengers feel. To achieve this, Ford focused on three key areas: a revolutionary suspension system, a chassis designed for comfort, soundproofing that made the cabin whisper greet. Let's break down why the LTD's ride was unlike anything else in its price range. The magic of Ford's twin I-beam. Suspension is what separates a stiff, bumpy ride from a smooth, gliding experience. And Ford didn't just copy what luxury brands were doing, they engineered something better. Soft coil springs at all four corners absorbed road imperfections, preventing passengers from feeling every crack and bump. Extra-long suspension travel allowed the LTD to soak up uneven surfaces, giving it a floating sensation similar to a Cadillac. Twin I-beam front suspension. A design originally developed for Ford trucks, this setup gave the LTD incredible stability and control even at high speeds. The result? A ride that felt effortless, as if the car was gliding over the road instead of rolling on it. Many buyers compared the LTD's suspension to more expensive Lincolns and Cadillacs, but without the high price tag. A frame built for stability and silence. Luxury isn't just about comfort, it's also about control. No one wants a car that feels like it's floating out of control on the highway. Ford engineered the LTD's chassis and frame to create the perfect balance between softness and stability. Extra wide wheelbase. At 121 inches, the LTD's long wheelbase made it incredibly stable at high speeds. Heavily reinforced frame, reduced vibrations, keeping the ride smooth even on rough roads. Strategic weight distribution. Placing more weight over the rear wheels gave the LTD a planted, confident feel in corners. This wasn't just a soft riding car, it was a well-engineered machine that gave drivers a sense of confidence behind the wheel. At 70 mph on the highway, the LTD didn't just feel smooth, it felt effortless. How Ford made the LTD one of the quietest cars on the road. A car can look luxurious and drive smoothly, but if the cabin is filled with engine noise, wind, and road sounds, it ruins the experience. That's why Ford focused heavily on soundproofing, ensuring that passengers inside the LTD felt like they were sealed off from the outside world. Triple-layer insulation. Special padding under the carpet, inside the doors, and under the hood absorbed road noise. Double-sealed doors prevented wind from whistling through the gaps. Acoustic engine mounts. Reduced vibrations, making the engine nearly silent inside the cabin. Many buyers were shocked by just how quiet the LTD was. Some even said it was quieter than a Cadillac, and reviews from the time backed that up. This was a car where you could hold a conversation at normal volume while cruising down the highway, something that wasn't common in cars at this price. The LTD's steering, effortless control at any speed. Luxury isn't just about a soft ride, it's about how easy it is to drive. A high-end car should never feel heavy or difficult to control. That's why Ford equipped the LTD with advanced power steering, making it one of the easiest full-size cars to maneuver. Variable ratio power steering made turning effortless at low speeds while maintaining stability at high speeds. Hydraulic steering assist allowed drivers to make tight turns with just one hand, making parking stress-free. Precise handling, unlike some overly soft luxury cars that felt loose or disconnected, the LTD gave drivers a direct, confident feel on the road. For an older audience, this effortless steering made a huge difference. Drivers didn't have to wrestle with the wheel or struggle with tight parking spaces. It was a luxury experience through and through. Why the LTD's ride made it feel more expensive than it was luxury cars. In the 1960s were judged by how they felt on the road, and the LTD delivered an experience that fooled almost everyone. Ride quality like a Cadillac, thanks to soft suspension and a well-designed frame. Quiet like a Lincoln, with extensive soundproofing that created a peaceful cabin. Steering like a European luxury car. Effortless, smooth, and precise. For thousands of buyers, the LTD felt like a car that should have cost much more, and that's why so many people chose it over the competition. This wasn't just another full-size sedan, it was a statement. A car that gave ordinary buyers a high-end experience without the high-end price. And that's why, decades later, the 1968 Ford LTD remains one of the most legendary hidden luxury Ford LTD remains one of the most legendary hidden lug cars ever built. Have you ever looked at a car and thought, that must cost a fortune, only to be shocked when you found out it was actually affordable? What if I told you there was one American car that tricked an entire generation into believing it was a high-end luxury vehicle, but without the luxury price tag? This wasn't just clever marketing, it was a psychological masterpiece. A car built to look, feel, and ride like something far more expensive than it was. It was the 1968 Ford LTD, a machine that could stand proudly next to a Cadillac or a Lincoln and still turn heads, all while costing a fraction of the price. And here's the best part. If you stick with me until the end of this video, you'll discover a hidden detail about this car that even most classic car enthusiasts don't know. A secret that truly cemented its status as the ultimate affordable luxury. So why did the Ford LTD fool so many people? What made it look like a premium car when, in reality, it was just a clever illusion? Let's break it down. Back in the 1960s, the American auto industry was booming. Big cars, powerful V8 engines, and plush interiors were everywhere. If you had money, you bought a Cadillac, Lincoln, or Buick, symbols of status and success. These were the cars of businessmen, doctors, and executives. If you drove one, people knew you made it in life. But what if you wanted that same prestige, comfort, and style without draining your bank account? What if there was a car that could make you feel like a Cadillac owner without the Cadillac price? That's exactly where Ford saw an opportunity. They realized something powerful. Luxury isn't always about what's under the hood. It's about perception. If they could build a car that looked and felt luxurious, people would associate it with wealth and class, even if it wasn't priced like a high-end machine. And so the Ford LTD was born. A car designed to trick the senses, impress your neighbors, and make you feel like you were driving something far more expensive than it really was. The first thing Ford did was give the LTD a presence. When you saw it parked next to a Cadillac, it didn't look out of place. The long, sleek body, the hidden headlights, the vinyl roof, these were design choices borrowed directly from luxury cars. The chrome detailing, the wide front grille, and the wood grain accents, everything screamed high-class motoring. But here's where Ford really played its cards right. They didn't just copy luxury design, they improved on it in subtle ways. Take the hidden headlights, for example. In 1968, most cars in this price range had exposed headlights. But Ford decided to conceal them behind a stylish grille, just like a high-end Lincoln or Chrysler. This single design element made the LTD look far more expensive than it was. It was a psychological trick, because in the minds of consumers, hidden headlights equaled luxury. The same goes for the vinyl roof. It wasn't real leather, but it looked premium. It gave the impression of a more expensive build, even though it was just an affordable styling touch. And let's talk about the interior. Soft, plush seats, deep carpeting, and simulated wood paneling. Ford knew that people associate comfort with luxury. The moment you stepped inside, you felt like you were in a high-end car, even though the materials weren't quite as premium as a Cadillac. Ford understood human psychology better than most car makers at the time. They knew that the way a car feels is often more important than what it actually is. The way the doors closed with a solid thunk, the way the dashboard wrapped around the driver, the way the suspension floated over bumps. All these small details created the illusion of wealth. And here's the real kicker. The LTD delivered this experience for a fraction of the cost of a true luxury car. By 1968, the Ford LTD was everywhere. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. People who drove it weren't just buying a vehicle, they were buying into an idea. That you didn't have to be rich to feel like you were driving a luxury car. That you could have style, comfort, and presence without overspending. It was a car that made middle-class Americans feel like executives. It allowed hard-working families to enjoy the prestige of a high-end ride without going into debt. And that's exactly why it fooled so many people into believing it was far more expensive than it really was. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Ford didn't just make the LTD look like a luxury car. They engineered it to drive like one too. The secret wasn't just in its design, but in how it rode, handled, and performed on the road. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover in the next section. How Ford made this car feel like a Cadillac, even though it wasn't one. Stay tuned. Luxury, status, power. These were the three pillars of the American automobile industry in the 1960s. Owning a car wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was a statement. A declaration of success, wealth, and social standing. If you pulled up in a Cadillac, Lincoln, or Buick, people didn't just see a car. They saw a man who had arrived in life. But there was a problem. The cost of these luxury cars was out of reach for most middle-class families. A brand new Cadillac DeVille in 1968 could easily set you back $5,500. A hefty price at a time when the average American salary was around $7,700 per year. Owning a true luxury car was a privilege reserved for the wealthy, and that's where Ford saw its golden opportunity. The 1960s were an era of rapid expansion in the auto industry. American highways were growing, suburban neighborhoods were booming, and families wanted cars that were big, comfortable, and stylish. But not everyone could afford to step into the high-end luxury segment. The demand for an affordable alternative was louder than ever. At the time, General Motors, GM, dominated the luxury market. Cadillac was the undisputed king, followed closely by Buick and Oldsmobile. These brands had spent decades building a reputation for prestige and quality. If you wanted an elite car, you went to GM. Ford, on the other hand, had always been about practicality and affordability. They were known for mass-producing cars for the average American. But now, they wanted a piece of the luxury market. They knew they couldn't outprice Cadillac, but they could outsmart them. Instead of directly competing with GM's high-end brands, Ford decided to blur the lines between affordability and luxury. The plan was simple: build a car that looked, felt, and drove like a Cadillac without the Cadillac price tag. And so the Ford LTD was born. This wasn't just another full-size sedan. It was Ford's boldest experiment in automotive psychology. It didn't need to be a true luxury car. It just needed to convince people that it was. From the moment it hit the streets, the LTD started changing perceptions. It was long, sleek, and imposing, with the kind of styling usually reserved for premium cars. It had hidden headlights, chrome trim, and a plush interior that felt far more expensive than it actually was. The trick was working. People started seeing the LTD as a car that belonged in the luxury class, even though it was priced much lower. But Ford didn't stop at just looks. They went deeper. They knew that luxury wasn't just about what the car looked like. It was about how it made you feel when you sat behind the wheel. To achieve this, they focused on three key things. A quieter ride. Ford engineers developed a new quiet ride technology, adding extra insulation and soundproofing to the cabin. This reduced road noise and made the LTD feel smooth, solid, and refined, just like a high-end Cadillac. A softer suspension instead of a stiff, performance-oriented ride. The LTD was tuned for comfort. It floated over bumps, giving passengers a feeling of effortless luxury, even at high speeds. Premium interior touches, soft seats, thick carpeting, and simulated wood paneling gave the LTD an upscale ambiance that middle-class buyers had never experienced in an affordable car before. All of this was intentional. Ford understood that people don't just buy cars, they buy experiences. If the LTD could offer the feeling of luxury, then buyers would believe it was worth more than it actually cost. The result? A massive success. By 1968, Ford was selling LTDs at an astonishing rate. People who had never considered buying a Ford before were now lining up to own one. It wasn't just because it was a good car. It was because it made them feel like they were getting something exclusive, a luxury experience without the luxury price. Competitors started taking notice. GM, Chrysler, and even American Motors began to see that Ford had cracked the code. They had created a car that blurred the line between mainstream and luxury, and buyers were loving it. But here's the most interesting part. While other brands were focusing on bigger engines, more horsepower, and flashier features, Ford was quietly winning the psychological game. They had tapped into something that no one else had truly mastered yet: the power of perception. For years, car buyers had been conditioned to think that luxury meant expensive, but Ford had just rewritten the rules. They had proven that a car didn't need a Cadillac badge to feel like a Cadillac. It just needed the right mix of design, comfort, and driving experience to convince people that it belonged in the same league. The 1968 Ford LTD wasn't just a car. It was a turning point in automotive marketing. It showed the world that status could be engineered, that luxury wasn't always about the price tag, but about how the car made you feel. And that's exactly why the LTD became one of the most deceptive cars of its era. A car that looked like $1 million but was priced for the everyday driver. A car that made its owners feel like they had won the system. And they had. Because for a brief moment in history, the Ford LTD made people believe that they didn't have to be rich to drive something luxurious. It gave them the thrill of owning a high-end car without the financial burden. And in the end, isn't that the greatest illusion of all? Luxury isn't just about what you see. It's about what you feel. The weight of the doors when they close, the silence of the cabin when you're cruising, the way the suspension absorbs the road without a hint of roughness. True luxury isn't just a feature list, it's an experience. And in 1968, Ford understood this better than anyone. The Ford LTD didn't just look expensive, it felt expensive in ways that most people couldn't even explain. The moment you stepped inside, something felt different. It wasn't just a bigger Galaxy, and it wasn't a cheap alternative to a Lincoln. It was something else, something in between, and that was the secret. Ford didn't copy Cadillac or Lincoln. They studied them. They learned what made those cars feel luxurious and then recreated the experience, but in a way that was affordable to build and sell. One of the most important aspects of this was the ride quality. Luxury cars of the time were known for their smooth, floating sensation, making even rough roads feel like freshly paved highways. Ford had to deliver this same experience without the cost of a high-end suspension system, so they got creative. The LTD featured Ford's new Magic Air suspension, which was carefully tuned to eliminate harshness. It had softer coil springs, upgraded shock absorbers, and reinforced body mounts designed to reduce road vibration. This gave the car a feeling of effortless motion, where even large bumps barely registered inside the cabin. But ride quality was only part of the equation. The real magic happened in noise control. Ford engineers introduced what they called the silent flow ventilation system. This was a carefully designed airflow system that redirected outside noise, preventing wind and road sounds from penetrating the cabin. Combined with extra layers of insulation, thicker door seals, and a well-padded interior, the result was a level of quietness that most people had never experienced in a Ford before. Silence, as it turns out, is one of the strongest signals of luxury. The quieter a car is, the more solid and expensive it feels. And Ford understood this. The LTD didn't just block noise, it absorbed it. Engineers strategically placed acoustic padding in key areas of the car, especially around the firewall, wheel wells, and trunk. Even at highway speeds, the cabin remained hushed, making conversations effortless and the driving experience eerily smooth. But the illusion of luxury didn't stop there. Ford also focused on steering feel. Luxury cars of the time had a light, effortless steering response. You didn't fight the wheel, you guided it with the slightest touch. Ford replicated this by fine-tuning the variable ratio power steering system, making sure that the LTD had that classic one-finger steering feel. The wheel turned smoothly and effortlessly, adding to the sense of refinement. Every movement, every interaction with the car had to feel premium. That's why Ford put extra effort into the door hinges and latches. It may sound like a minor detail, but the way a car door closes can change a person's entire perception of its quality. A cheap car's door closes with a tinny clang, hollow, weak, and unimpressive, but a luxury car? It closes with a deep, solid thud, a sound that signals strength and craftsmanship. Ford engineers spent time perfecting this small but powerful detail. They used thicker gauge steel, adjusted the latch mechanisms, and reinforced the doors to give them more weight and a satisfying closure sound. It worked. People didn't just see the LTD as a premium car, they felt it. They experienced it in ways they couldn't even describe. But what really sealed the illusion of luxury was the interior. Step inside a 1968 Ford LTD, and you were greeted by plush, cushioned seats, thick carpeting, and a dashboard that exuded elegance. But Ford didn't stop at just using soft materials. They carefully arranged the interior to feel spacious and upscale. The dashboard was designed with symmetry and flow, creating a sense of openness. The gauges were set in deep, chrome-rimmed bezels, just like a Cadillac. The wood-grain trim, though simulated, had a rich, warm tone that made the cabin feel more expensive than it was. Even the climate control knobs and radio dials were designed with a weighted, smooth-turning feel, making every interaction with the car feel intentional and refined. Ford understood that true luxury isn't just about what you see, it's about how everything feels to the touch. And that's why the LTD was so deceptive. It made middle-class buyers feel like they were sitting in something far beyond their price range. It gave them the experience of a high-end luxury car without the financial burden. But the most remarkable part? The LTD didn't just trick car buyers. It tricked everyone. Neighbors, friends, passengers. Even people who considered themselves car guys often assumed the LTD was something more prestigious than it really was. That's how well engineered this illusion was. The Ford LTD wasn't just a car, it was an experiment in perception. And it proved that with the right engineering, even an affordable car could be made to feel like something truly elite. The result? A vehicle that was loved, respected, and, above all, believed. A car that didn't just offer transportation, it offered the feeling of success. Luxury cars aren't just about style and comfort. They carry an expectation of effortless power, the kind that moves with grace, never struggling, never loud or aggressive. True luxury isn't about roaring engines or high-revving excitement. It's about strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Ford understood this perfectly. The LTD wasn't built to be a sports car. It wasn't designed for